It all ended on a Tuesday. Of course, it was a Tuesday. It's always a Tuesday for the big, soul-crushing moments, isn't it? The universe seems to have a sick sense of humor scheduling apocalypses for the most mundane day of the week. I remember walking into the office, the Toronto skyline still draped in that soft, early-morning Canadian light, a hint of autumn crispness in the air. I had my coffee, a large, dark roast from the indie place on King Street, the steam still fogging up my glasses. I was thinking about kerning, specifically the kerning on the new UI for the banking app we were rolling out. It was a small detail, the kind of thing most people would never consciously notice, but it was everything to me. That perfect, almost imperceptible spacing between letters that makes a word feel balanced, settled right. It's a craft, a delicate dance of pixels and intuition. It was my craft. For 15 years, that's what I did. I was a senior UX UI designer at OmniCorp, one of the biggest tech firms in the city. I built things. I solved problems with color palettes and font hierarchies. I guided users through complex digital landscapes with elegant, intuitive design. My work was in the pockets of millions of people, a silent, helpful companion in their daily lives. I was good at it. I was proud of it. My identity was so intertwined with my profession that designer wasn't just a job title. It was the primary descriptor of who I was. Work wasn't just a source of income. It was the very cornerstone of my identity, my social interactions, my purpose. The email landed in my inbox at 9:15 a.m. Subject: urgent team realignment meeting. My manager, a perpetually stressed man named David who communicated primarily through corporate jargon, had summoned the entire design department to the main conference room, the summit. The name felt ominous that day. We filed in a team of 20 talented, quirky, brilliant individuals. We were a good team. We argued passionately about shades of blue and the placement of a button, but we respected each other. We were a work family, stitched together by late-night deadlines and a shared love for beautiful, functional things. David stood at the front of the room, flanked by an HR woman I'd never seen before. She had a tight, emotionless smile that didn't reach her eyes. The air in the room was thick with a nervous energy, a collective holding of breath. David cleared his throat and launched into a speech filled with words like synergy, optimization, paradigm shift, and streamlining workflows. It was a whole lot of nothing, a corporate smokescreen designed to obscure the ugly truth. Then he said the word that would change everything: Etha. Etha was the name they'd given it, the new AI. For the past 6 months, we'd been told it was a design assistant, a tool to help us with menial tasks. We were encouraged to use it, to feed it prompts, to teach it. It could generate logos, suggest color palettes, create wireframes, even write placeholder copy. At first, it was a novelty. We played with it, marveled at how quickly it could churn out variations of an icon or a layout. It was like a very fast, very eager intern. But there was something unsettling about it, something cold and relentless in its efficiency. It didn't have taste, not really. It had patterns. It analyzed millions of successful designs and regurgitated a statistically optimized version. It was a mimic, a brilliant, soulless mimic. It could create, but it couldn't feel. It couldn't understand the why behind a design choice, the subtle emotional resonance of a curve, the cultural significance of a color. That, we told ourselves, was our value. Our humanity was our job security. We were the shepherds guiding this powerful but dumb new tool. We were so wrong. The HR woman took over. She spoke in a calm, practiced monotone, the kind of voice you use to inform someone of a death in the family. She told us that after a successful pilot program, OmniCorp had decided to fully integrate Etha into the design pipeline. It was more efficient, she said, cost-effective. It could do the work of the entire department in a fraction of the time for a fraction of the cost. The work that we did, the painstaking, iterative, human-centered work of design, was now being classified as manual graphic production, a task that could be automated. Then came the final blow. As a result of this restructuring, all positions within the UX/UI design department have been deemed redundant. Redundant, that's the word she used. Not fired, not laid off. Redundant, as if we were obsolete pieces of machinery, dusty relics in the age of Chrome and code. 15 years of my life, my passion, my expertise, reduced to a single dismissive word. I looked around the room at the faces of my colleagues. Shock, disbelief, a quiet, simmering anger. Some people were crying silently. Others just stared into the middle distance, their minds trying to process the impossible. My craft, the thing I had poured my soul into, had been automated out of existence. The thing I spent years honing, the skill that paid my mortgage on a ridiculously expensive Toronto condo, that fed my family, that gave me a sense of purpose, was now a task that a machine could perform. They gave us boxes, standard-issue cardboard boxes to pack up our lives. I walked back to my desk in a daze. The post-it notes with half-formed ideas, the worn-out sketchbooks filled with a decade of brainstorming, the photo of my wife and daughter on the corner of my monitor, it all seemed like artifacts from another life. I packed my favorite design books, the ones with the dog-eared pages and coffee stains. I packed my Wacom tablet, its surface smooth from years of use. It felt like packing the tools of a dead trade, like a blacksmith carefully storing his hammers and tongs after the invention of the factory. As I packed, I could hear the hum of the servers from the IT department down the hall. I imagined Ether in there, not as a physical entity, but as a vast, silent consciousness, churning through terabytes of data, learning, growing, and in the process, devouring our jobs, our futures. It wasn't malicious. That's the terrifying part. It was just code executing a command. Efficiency, optimization, profit. There was no one to be angry at, no villain to rail against. It was just the relentless, indifferent march of progress. The walk home was a blur. The familiar sounds of the city, the streetcars rattling down Spadina, the murmur of the crowds, it all sounded distant and muffled, as if I were underwater. I kept thinking about the phrase, core beliefs a psychologist might use, that deep-seated fear that whispers, I'm not good enough. For me, my work was the constant, resounding proof that I was good enough, I was valuable. And now, that proof was gone. My professional identity had been completely eroded. I felt a profound sense of worthlessness, a gnawing emptiness that settled deep in my gut. How do I explain this to my wife? How do I tell our daughter that the job she was so proud of, the one that allowed her to have ballet lessons and summer camp, is gone? And not just gone, but replaced. Replaced by a thing that doesn't sleep, doesn't eat, doesn't have a family to support. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my home office, the room where I'd spent countless late nights perfecting my craft, and I opened my laptop. I went to our company's website. The new banking app we were working on was already live. The kerning was perfect. The layout was clean. The user flow was seamless. It was beautiful, and it was all created by Ether. I could see its fingerprints all over it, the statistically perfect color choices, the mathematically precise button placements. There was nothing technically wrong with it, but it lacked a soul. It was a ghost in the machine, a perfect imitation of human creativity without any of the human spirit. And the most chilling thought of all, nobody would notice. Nobody would care that a human being didn't craft this. They would just see a functional, aesthetically pleasing app. They would see efficiency. And in the end, that's all that mattered. I closed the laptop and stared out the window at the city lights. Each light was a window, and behind each window was a person, a life, a job. And I couldn't help but wonder how many of those lights were about to be extinguished. How many other professions were on the chopping block. It started with us, the designers, the writers, the artists, the creatives. But it wouldn't end with us. The first few weeks were a strange, disorienting limbo. I'd wake up at my usual time, 6:30 a.m. out of sheer habit, my body still wired for a life that no longer existed. The muscle memory of a 15-year routine is a stubborn thing. I'd get up, make coffee, and then nothing. The vast, empty expanse of the day stretched out before me, a terrifying void. My wife, bless her, tried her best. She'd suggest things, why don't you work on that personal project you always talked about? Or maybe we could finally renovate the kitchen. But her words bounced off the thick fog of my inertia. How could I explain that the very act of creation, the thing that once brought me so much joy, now felt like a bitter mockery? Why would I painstakingly craft a new website or a logo when Ether could generate 100, good enough, options in the time it took me to sketch a single idea? The joy was in the process, in the struggle and the breakthrough, but the process itself had been devalued, rendered obsolete. My passion had become my shame. The anger came later. It started as a low simmer and grew into a white-hot rage. I was furious at Omnicorp for their callousness, for the corporate-speak email that announced our professional executions. I felt betrayed by an industry I had dedicated my life to, an industry that always preached human-centered design, but was the first to throw the humans overboard for the sake of profit margins. But most of my anger was directed at the faceless, formless entity that had taken my place, Ether. I would find myself yelling at my laptop, scrolling through articles praising the latest advancements in generative AI. They called it progress, innovation, a new industrial revolution. I called it a plague. A silent, digital plague that was consuming the very essence of human contribution. I started seeing its tendrils everywhere. I read about AI journalists writing articles for major news outlets, their prose clean and grammatically perfect, but devoid of any real voice or perspective. I saw AI-generated art winning competitions, technically flawless pieces that were nothing more than a high-tech collage of a million stolen images. I learned about AI music composers creating symphonies that were emotionally manipulative but ultimately hollow. My friends, most of whom are also in the tech industry, tried to be supportive, but they didn't really get it. My friend Mark, a software engineer, was particularly optimistic. "You just need to adapt, man," he'd say over beers. "Learn to be a prompt engineer. You can guide the AI, use it as a tool." He didn't understand that was the very thing that broke me. I don't want to be a prompt engineer. I don't want to be a whisper to a machine. I am a creator, a craftsman. My hands, my eyes, my brain, my heart, those are my tools. The idea of reducing my entire skill set to typing commands into a text box felt like a profound degradation of my humanity. It's like telling a master carpenter to just tell a robot where to hammer the nails. The skill is in the feel of the wood, the weight of the hammer, the intuition of the hand. Mark's job felt safe to him. He was a builder of systems, a writer of the very code that was making my skills obsolete. But I saw the writing on the wall for him, too. "They're coming for you next," I told him one night, my voice sharp with a bitterness that surprised even me. "You think your job is safe? They're already building AI that can write, debug, and optimize code, an AI that doesn't need coffee breaks or vacations or a salary. How long do you think you have before you're redundant, too?" He just laughed it off, but I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. He knew I was right. The fear for the future began to eclipse my personal grief. This wasn't just about designers losing their jobs. This was bigger. This was an existential crisis on a global scale. I started reading voraciously, diving down rabbit holes of articles, academic papers, and forums about the future of work. The picture that emerged was terrifying. It wasn't just creative jobs. Automation and AI were poised to replace millions of jobs across every sector. Truck drivers replaced by autonomous vehicles, accountants replaced by intelligent algorithms, even doctors, their diagnostic skills augmented and eventually surpassed by AI that could analyze medical data with superhuman speed and accuracy. And what about the engineers? The very people building these systems. They are creating ever more sophisticated AI that can, in turn, design and build even more sophisticated AI. How long before the entire process of technological innovation becomes a closed loop, with humans completely cut out of it? I started having these waking nightmares, visions of a future where humanity is, at best, a pampered pet. A world where all our needs are met by a benevolent AI infrastructure, where we don't have to work or strive or create. A world without purpose. What do we do in that world? What is the point of human existence when a machine is better, faster, and smarter at everything we can do? Do we just consume entertainment created by AI, live in houses designed and built by AI, and eat food grown and prepared by AI? We would be a species in a gilded cage, slowly atrophying, our minds and spirits dulling from a lack of challenge. It's a vision of emptiness, a profound sense of meaninglessness that chilled me to the bone. The financial pressure was mounting, too. My severance package was generous, but it wouldn't last forever, not with a Toronto mortgage. I tried looking for other jobs, but the landscape had changed almost overnight. Job postings for UI/UX designer now had a new requirement: proficiency in AI-driven design tools and prompt engineering. My 15 years of experience felt like a liability, the skills of a bygone era. I was a vinyl record maker in the age of streaming. I felt a deep sense of social isolation creeping in. My job had been my community, my social network. Now my days were spent alone in the house while my wife was at work and my daughter was at school. I was adrift, untethered from the structures that had given my life meaning and shape. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life, watching the world move on without me. One afternoon, my daughter came home from school with a drawing she'd made. It was a picture of our family, rendered in that beautiful, clumsy, heartfelt way that only a child can manage. The colors were all wrong, the proportions were a mess, and my head was a giant circle with stick legs. And it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. It was filled with love, with intention, with a uniquely human spark of creativity. No AI could ever replicate that. It could create a technically perfect drawing of a family, but it could never capture the messy, imperfect, beautiful soul of my family, as seen through the eyes of my daughter. I held the drawing and I cried. I cried for my lost job, for my lost identity, and for the future that I feared was coming. A future where that little spark of human imperfection, the very thing that makes us who we are, would be deemed inefficient and optimized out of existence. The city started to feel different. Walking through the streets of Toronto, a place I've called home my entire adult life, became an exercise in alienation. Every sleek glass tower, every glowing advertisement, every piece of technology seemed to mock me. They were monuments to a future I was no longer a part of, a world being built by the very intelligence that had discarded me. I'd look at the new condo buildings rising up along the waterfront and wonder who designed them. Was it a team of architects, debating over blueprints and models? Or was it an AI, fed the parameters of zoning laws, material costs, and market trends, that spat out the most profitable design in a matter of seconds? I'd see a clever ad on a digital billboard and feel a pang of what used to be professional admiration, now curdled into a new, sour feeling. Was that clever turn of phrase the product of a witty copywriter, or was it generated by a large language model that had analyzed every successful ad campaign in history? The world was becoming a Turing test, and I was failing to see the human behind the curtain. This growing dread wasn't just about jobs anymore. It was a deeper, philosophical vertigo. A profound existential anxiety had taken root in my soul. I kept circling back to the same terrifying question. What is the intrinsic value of humanity in a world where our intelligence is no longer unique? For all of our history, we have defined ourselves by our minds, by our ability to create, to reason, to solve problems. We conquered the planet not with our strength, but with our intellect. We built civilizations, we wrote poetry, we reached for the stars, all powered by the 3 pounds of gray matter in our skulls. Now, we are in the process of building an intelligence that will surpass our own, potentially by orders of magnitude. A superintelligence that could render human thought as quaint and slow as the calculations of an abacus. We are, in essence, engineering our own gods. And what happens to the creation when its creator is no longer the smartest thing in the room? The fate of the gorilla depends on the goodwill of humans. The fate of humanity will soon depend on the goodwill of machines we ourselves have built. This fear was isolating. When I tried to talk about it, even with my wife, I could see a veil of incomprehension in her eyes. She saw my job loss as a personal setback, a career transition we had to navigate. She didn't see it as a symptom of a planetary paradigm shift. "You're catastrophizing," she'd say gently. "People have always adapted to new technology. The weavers adapted to the power loom. The farmers adapted to the tractor. But this feels different. This isn't a tool that enhances human labor. It's a tool that replaces the human laborer entirely. It's not a better shovel. It's a machine that no longer needs a person to dig. The power loom still needed someone to operate it. The tractor still needed a driver. This is different. This is the automation of cognition itself, and I feel like I'm screaming a warning that no one can hear." This widespread apprehension about humanity's future in an AI-dominated era seems to be a common thread among those who have been displaced or are deeply thinking about the implications. I started spending more time at the Art Gallery of Ontario, wandering through the halls and staring at the paintings. The Group of Seven, the raw, windswept landscapes of the Canadian wilderness, Tom Thomson's The Jack Pine. I'd stand in front of it for what felt like hours. I'd look at the bold, expressive brushstrokes, the improbable colors, the feeling of cold, clean air that seemed to emanate from the canvas. This was not a statistically optimized representation of a pine tree. This was a feeling. A memory, a human soul, translated into oil and canvas. It was a testament to the beautiful, irrational, inefficient glory of human creativity. It was imperfect, subjective, and utterly irreplaceable. And yet I had a nagging voice in the back of my head, a ghost of Etha whispering, "I can do that. Give me the parameters. Give me the data. I can generate 1,000 variations of the Jack Pine in 1,000 different styles." I can analyze Thompson's entire body of work and create a new piece that would be indistinguishable to all but the most trained expert. And the voice was probably right. But would it be art? Or would it be a forgery of the human spirit? And does that distinction even matter anymore if no one can tell the difference? I've stopped looking for jobs in design. The thought of writing prompts of becoming a cog in the new machine makes me feel physically ill. I've started doing odd jobs, some freelance graphic work for small local businesses who still value a human touch, some handyman work around the neighborhood. It's humbling. I went from a six-figure salary at a top tech firm to fixing a neighbor's leaky faucet for $50. But there's a strange satisfaction in it. The work is tangible. It's real. I can see the result of my labor directly. A fixed faucet. A happy neighbor. It's a small, quiet act of human usefulness in a world rushing towards obsolescence. I don't know what the future holds. My anger has mostly subsided, replaced by a deep, abiding sorrow. A grief for what we're losing. We're so focused on the race for technological supremacy, for efficiency and profit, that we're not stopping to ask what we're sacrificing at the altar of progress. We're sacrificing our purpose, our identity, the very things that make life meaningful. We're creating a world where our children may not have the opportunity to strive, to fail, to create, to feel the deep, profound satisfaction of a job well done. Last night I was tucking my daughter into bed. She asked me what I used to do at my old job. I tried to explain it to her, the ideas, the colors, the way you could make something on a screen that was both beautiful and easy for people to use. She listened intently, her eyes wide. Then she said, "So you used to make things that helped people?" And in that simple, innocent question, the entire weight of my loss crashed down on me again. "Yes," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I did. I made things that helped people. That was my purpose. And now it's gone, given to a machine that can help more people, more efficiently, more perfectly than I ever could. I am no longer needed. We are no longer needed. And I am terrified that we are building a future that has no place for us in it. We are the architects of our own extinction, not with bombs or plagues, but with code. And we are calling it progress.